work. So good morning. First, kudos to the organizers. So they asked me whether I would like to speak at DevOps, and say, okay, we could do that, but really no time. And I forgot about that. And I think 2 days ago, I know that I have to go to Brussels and everything, so I check out the plane. And so what's actually the topic? And I went to a Friday and so, okay, what is it? Real world Java EE abstract to be announced. So, okay, this is the best thing can happen. So I can talk whatever you want for about 1 hour. And I was glad that Jochen was, I think Jochen's fault was it, that they didn't announce something like building composite SOA applications with nothing like ESB in 45 minutes. I would be in trouble. So, especially without slides, right? Because SOA without slides hardly works, I would say. So I'm a Java developer, basically, and I'm hacking more and more and spend less and less time at conferences. So I started Java in 1995. I'm freelancer since 1997, and I really enjoy it. So this is a strange part of my person, probably. So I really like the Java programming language. So there is a different stuff, but I still enjoy Java. And what I see in projects is not Java fault why they are inefficient. The problem are ivory towers. So if you build pragmatic Java code, it's gets very, very productive actually. And what I do to minimize the travel, 3 times a year I organize a workshop in Munich, or I'm the trainer on Munich Airport. AIX.com, if you like, come to the next one is March, and then I think in July or something. This book is relatively old, 1 year old. This is fairly new, about, I think, 8 weeks. And 4 weeks ago I published Kindle version, and the interesting story, you can borrow it for free for unlimited time. So you can buy it or borrow it. So, and buying is not for free and borrow is for free. In the real world, there are no slides, and this is the last slide. We see you in March 2013, and marketing is over. So I gave the slides on the stick, so you will be able to download them. So I'm using the development version of NetBeans just because if I see some bugs, I try to submit them immediately. The only thing I didn't update it to the recent version because I was afraid that something breaks. It's not that fun on stage. So it is, I don't know, 2 weeks old version, but actually there will be no special features. So first, 2 years ago I was at DevOps, and I remember I create some turbo interceptors and some cinema stuff. And right now, after 2 years, I think many of you are using Java 6 already. So who is using Java 6 already in projects? It's actually half or more than half, so we should make a picture. It's actually amazing. Java 5? Okay. And J2 is the old stuff with lots of XML. No one remembers this is what our dads and grandfathers did. So J2E, the old stuff? I have to do it sometimes. Okay, almost no one. This is actually amazing. So what I do, so my prediction was I will find in projects one class with 50 annotations, and this will be a Java 6 project, but it actually is getting worse. So I will try to, in this year, to discuss with you what I see in projects and why they are inefficient, and do be a real-world walkthrough source code, the interesting parts, with some prepared source. Everything is open source, so I would like to show you that. Anything else from my projects, I have to sign, a couple of NDAs, so it's almost impossible to talk what I'm actually doing in real life. That's any other consultant, actually. So, how to start a Java EE project? So, don't bother with the junk, it's just my public talks are junk. So, Maven, archetype, generate. I was asked whether I need an internet, so I guess for that. This is how I start Java 6 project. So it now goes to internet and fetches some archetypes. I call them wizards. It's actually a wizard how to create a project setup. There is a nice JBoss project called Forge. It is an interactive way to create projects, but to start with Java 6, if we had an internet, it would be already done. So this is not usual. If not, NetBeans cached everything, so I can start with NetBeans. But this is what I actually do. I don't do it with NetBeans, neither with IntelliJ or Eclipse. I just try from command line. Wow. Okay, usually I would do it again with grep to filter for web app Java 6. I won't repeat that because it is too slow. So instead of that, I know that it starts about 400. 407. This is web app Java 6. This is what we need actually. So, and what we have to remember is the 407. So what I usually do, I grab to up for web app Java 6, and I look for the number 407, and 407, sorry. Choose a number. This is the dumb question, the latest num. Group ID is com devox, and artifact ID is slide generator. Someone tweeted yesterday he would like to see some slides, so we can generate them. Package, com, this is okay, and this is, you have always to say yes, otherwise you can go in for loop over and over again. So let's slide generator. The project is created. Maven clean install will build that. And this is amazing, but sometimes I get 2 weeks time for that to set up a Java 6 project. The bigger the company, the more time you get. So the best job as Java 6 consultant is just doing setup, you know? No programming, just project setup. So what happened behind the scenes? No kidding, it's just crazy world we are living. So is junk is here. So if you really have need help with setup, I will do it in 1 week, you know, special offer DevOps. So now, what happens within this? So this is what is generated. What I don't like is the order, so I just moved it to the bottom because it doesn't have to be here. Dependencies, this is, we come later to that. This is the only dependency you need if you just want to compile the projects but not test it, so we come later to that. This is the API, the whole Java 6 API. You can also use the Java EE API or web API, so if this is a web profile or the full profile. Okay, the compiler plugin says which JDK version to use, so I mean, this has nothing to do with Java 6. This is actually interesting. What it says is we need war plugin, because only to say that we don't need WebXML. So the default in war plugin is WebXML is required. So if I would delete that, I would get an error. It would require to create a WebXML. So the only reason to have that is because we would like to say, I don't need a WebXML. Maven dependency plugins are a little bit more strange. Not strange. This is necessary. What it means is some annotations in Java 6 are newer than in JDK. And you probably know that post-construct, pre-destroy resource comes from JDK, so-called GSR 250. Commons annotations, not from Java 6. So this plugin actually replaces this, the JDK annotations with Java 6. Usually you only need it if you are playing with data sources, data source definitions, do more serious stuff with JDBC and data source. If you're just using CDI, EJBs, and JPA, you could actually delete that. So as you see, there's nothing left. So this is actually an empty war project, actually, with a single dependency, Java 6, which is really nice. Why I'm emphasizing this? Last week, I deleted about 500 lines of Maven code, and I asked why they are there. There was crazy stuff, dependencies or two different, the Jetty, Tomcat, and all possible Maven repositories there, and no one could explain why. So it seems like they started with the projects, and the first thing, and the first question as they saw that is, we could create a super POM to extract common dependencies. So okay, which dependencies we have? Nothing here, right? So we'd like to extract this guy? Yeah, we can do that. But I mean, don't start, with Maven hell. So, and my unpopular opinion is, Maven is great for Java 6 if you don't exaggerate. So just use the default, it's perfect. But if you find yourself just tweaking, the plugins and configuring composite project, whatever, probably something else like Gradle is better suited. But if you are simple, or normal Java 6 project are simple, and simple projects are easily buildable with Maven 3. And don't even start with composite and and super perms if you don't need it. So most of my even commercial projects, mid-range projects, are just single word. This is my next fight against architects. So this is why I'm really fighting and arguing most of my time, is modularization. So for some reason, if someone creates a Maven project with one module, probably one module doesn't look right in the IDE. So they end up for Hello World building about 50 modules. And no kidding, in recent projects, there were Maven modules with an interface and an implementation, and of course, as always, the implementation of the suffix impl and the interface without impl in one module. And I asked why. The answer was because of modularization. So, okay, this is not the answer to my question. So there should be some requirement. So you are going to replace the implementation, whatever, and actually no answer. So it means just keep it simple. One module, even one monolithic module is better than 50 empty modules with one class. It just increases the complexity. And by the way, in the recent project, they tried to introduce composite. The developer guys, okay, we create a multi-module project with SuperPOM. So you are using Eclipse? And I said, yes, I just tried that. And speak you next week, you know. And I said, okay, I tried it. It was not that fun, so we can just go without SuperPOM. Okay, even better, right? So, the more complex the stuff gets, the harder tools you get, the more problems you get is tool support and so forth. So this was about Maven. How to build that? I have to choose the glassfish, and hopefully it will start. I just tried before. I just removed all the projects, so it should start again. The only problem is I just played with the network, so I just reconnected with, but it deployed the application Hello World. So seems to work. The next part, for fun, I would start today with a servlet. Never see servlet actually. Slides controller and ComDevox. This is of course, presentation is even perfect for slides. So finish. The servlet should work. The name is slides controller, so just check that. Slides controller doesn't work, so I have to at least just to restart that. So why servlet? Later, there is one hack I would share with you with asynchronous servlet. This is the case of why servlet. And I would just slides controller is the name. I think it was slides controller. So it seems to work right now. And so then create one single manage bean or EJB. I would call that slides generator. This would be in business. Slides boundary. So we can relate it to the boundary. And this is an EJB. This is what is supposed to be heavyweight, slow, hard to understand, and source of all evil, I would say. In my projects, everything starts with an EJB. It is the entry point of the components. Why is that? Because with the single stateless annotation, we get some interesting aspects. And the first most interesting one are transactions. So everything is transactional from with the annotation. Then we get some monitoring features because EJBs are monitored by application server because of very old spec called JSR 77, management in monitoring. Still works in most application servers. And some interesting asynchronous features as well. So I will just create a method, I don't know, string slides. Are you ready for the enterprise? This is actually what AC/DC intended to sing. So now, slide generator. Slides generator. And the first question is inject or add EJB. And the answer is always add inject. I actually modified my answer because previously I saw some. If you use add EJB, the errors will be more comprehensive. So you will see what, if you do strange stuff with EGBs, which is not allowed, with @EGB injection, the errors will look better. But you shouldn't do something like polymorphic inheritance with EGB. I saw it several times in projects, and with @EGB, we are able to find the error more easily than with @inject. But usually, if you are just building simple projects, Java 6 projects, @inject should be able to inject everything. When to use EGB? When @inject no more works. One is the case if you have to inject remote bean, or I don't know, you have to specific JNDI names to consider, or specific interfaces, because @inject is empty. There's nothing. And @EGB is more powerful. So if you go to @EGB, you see you can specify name, lookups, JNDI. So always use @inject, and you will be fine for the most parts. So the first issue I have is I always write that without thinking about this. So it's this package-wide visibility. And this causes, I would say, some heats in projects. So you developer, you're violating the encapsulation. It's like, yeah, but who would, from a servlet, from outside, invoke this attribute? I mean, by a servlet it's almost impossible. By RESTful web service is also impossible. By EGBs and managed beans, it is possible, but you don't. But usually everything is proxied, so you are not talking directly to the component, but you're talking via the proxy. And why I'm doing that? Because of testing. If everything is injected, has package visibility, it is very easy to mock. I'm aware of that you can use reflection to hack the private, but why to hack if you just can access the fields? So it makes testing a lot easier, because the unit test class and the production class are in the same package. And in Java 6 context, actually nothing can happen. And this causes endless discussions. So, and I just try to convince the architect or the developers, and if not, then you can always do something like this. And, or even better, now he has everything well encapsulated, you can also say, even I can do it, now it's perfect. So you can use the unit test this guy, this both as well. And what I really do is I start with that and then delete all the stuff, and no one will talk after a few weeks, because usually we get other problems than stupid private here, So, don't talk too much. So the second social hack is just minimize the time you spend in meetings. There is just, with Java 6 it's so easy, really. Just build a lot of proof of concepts. Start with iteration proof of concepts over and over again, and meetings don't lead to anything except talking. So, time boxing, half an hour assumption, then we can create proof of concept and see you later. So, the next thing is overuse of tools like Archillion. And Archillion is a very popular tool. It did some killer features. I would like to demonstrate the killer features right now and talk about the abuse of or misuse of tools like Archillion. For some reason, there is a misunderstanding what unit tests are in Java 6. I got the question I get asked is how to unit test Java 6 code. So okay, then I start with unit test and Mojito, and they are disappointed because nothing starts. They would expect that the application server starts behind the scenes and everything is deployed, and ask the question why you would like to deploy something. I mean, if you just would like to compute a text or whatever, why I need the application server? Yeah, it's easier or whatever. It's like, it's not easier. This is not the point of unit test. Unit test supposed to test the smallest possible part, like a method or even class, and everything is mock out. And I'm extremely radical in this approach. So to separate unit tests from integration tests in my projects. It means unit tests, it means really everything is mock out. And mock out means it is absolutely prohibited to start to use Archillion, entity manager implementations, queues or whatever. You're only allowed to test your algorithms or business logic. So the problem is most of the Java 6 projects are not that complicated, so you don't have a lot to test. You have not lots of algorithms and all the stuff because you are just accessing the database and visualizing something. In this case, I don't write unit tests. So what results in strange discussions with QA departments because they expect from me 80 to 100% code coverage, and I don't have anything to cover. So I say, okay, I just don't have nothing to test. And therefore, there is a great tool called Sonar Source. And what this tool does, or crap for J as well, it's also a nice framework. They combine the complexity with code coverage, and this is actually great because you see in the metric the complex code is not tested. This is what's interesting in my projects. So my projects, I have to admit, the unit test coverage is about 30%. Very pure, because it is prohibited to test getters and setters in my case. And 2 weeks ago, actually, I saw a project with 100% code coverage, but I would say 10% assert coverage. So there were 90% of code were somehow invoked, but never tested in case there was no asserts, actually. I don't know how to call that. So it looked great on paper, but it was a crappy project. So, so I asked the developers, why are you doing that? It's like, because we are forced by QA. So, and this was a perfect answer. So we talked with QA and they changed the metrics because it's just crazy to create unit tests for CRUD. Okay. Now, it means you shouldn't use Archelion for unit tests. It's just wrong. So now the other question is when to use Archelion for at all. So I'll try to find something for you. These are examples from the book. And I use Archelion for testing. And for instance, what I did, I inject a log. So I create a log producer. Wait a minute, production. So I have I'm in the test branch, so I have a class log. I have a log producer, and what a log producer does, it's dependent on the injection point, it creates a logger which is configured, and there are actually dependent on the configuration, a delegating logger and def null logger, also two implementations, and I would like to test that. I would like to test my logging mechanism. Now, it is somehow complex, so I have if-else, but if I would try to unit test that, everything would be mocked out and it will always work. And the interesting story is how behaves the logging mechanism within the application server. And this is a killer feature for Archelion. Why? Without Archelion, you wouldn't have, or tools like Archelion, so I use Archelion lots of the time, so there was a Cactus and embedded container, there are many tools, but Archelion I think is the easiest one. And without Archelion, I would have to create utility classes or more classes in production trunk, in production source folder, in source main Java. With Archelion, what I can do, I can say the following. Okay, I create a debug configuration, but it is in source-Java. I create a utility class called loguser. It is only used for tests. And I inject the log here, okay? And I can ask, is log injected? The logger, it's just utility methods. And in my actual test, I'm deploying the log user, log producer, but the debug configuration. And I can play with the contents of the war or jar. And this is only possible with tools like Archelion. Because what I'm doing right now is I'm booting the container, and I'm just saying, okay, in this case, I would like to change the configuration, and I would like to inject my services to a utility class, and the utility class is instrumented to be easier testable. And without Archelion, you would find mocks in source main Java, what leads to other questions always in my projects. How to configure Java 6 application, which makes me suspicious. If someone asks me how to configure Java 6 applications, my question is why you would like to know that, because why to configure? I mean, you can configure the application server, and there is no need to know in which stage the application actually is, except you would like to display something to the user, warning, this is a test level or something like this. Because there is usually, you access the resources like data sources, queues, or whatever from the JNDI tree, and you can configure the resources in different way, so that the test application server points to a test database, and the integration to integration, and production to production. So you just configure the application server differently, and the application just uses the same names of the JNDI resources which are injected anyway. So there is no need to do that. And with Archillion, you can eliminate the need of mocks. I forgot. Yeah, I have some T-shirts. If you ask good question, you get a T-shirt. So if you have questions, please ask. So everyone agreed? Private is getting removed, right? Tomorrow? Sorry, Monday, right? Okay. Archillion is great for integration tests. I think there's no argue about that. And why not in unit tests? So if you separate the unit tests from the integration tests, what happens then? The unit tests are extremely fast. So you can perform thousands of tests in seconds. And the integration tests are slow as they were, but they are coming after the unit tests are performed. So you get the first feedback faster. So what to do in Maven? What I usually do, there is a plugin, and it's called failsafe. And this is the plugin which actually inherits from Surefire. And this plugin searches for IT, for integration tests. So the name convention here is everything which ends with IT gets executed by failsafe plugin. Everything which ends with test gets executed by the unit test plugin. So what you gain is actually a clear separation with Maven, with one plugin. And you can start, so in my case, I just perform Maven clean install or Jenkins. And after that, Maven failsafe :integration tests to start the integration tests. And I have two jobs with clear separation. Okay, so this is what has to be performed. And now we are on test. Another modification usually is I'm using test frameworks like, it's actually wrong project. For unit testing, for mocking like Mockito. And I get always the question, why Mockito? And the answer is, from my point of view, it is the easiest framework to use, or more fluent framework. And actually, everything you would like to know about Mockito is there is one class with lots of static methods. The name of the class is Mockito, and it is really easy to write mocks. So even in Java 6, I would write my mock code with Mockito, mock everything out, because everything has package visibility, so I can do that easily. And yeah, and test with unit tests, integration tests are performed with integration tests. Yeah. Extension in Mockito, whether there is Archillion extensions. I'm using in my projects right now. Can I go around? Sure. I'm not wired. So I'm using Graphene right now, which is actually a nice extension of Archillion. What it does is a little bit out of topic. What Archillion does is it nicely integrates Selenium. So I can inject the browser window, and this is actually really nice too. It saves lots of lines of code. So, and in one project I use Archillion without even deploying, just to controlling the browser window. And the other project it deploys and then controls the browser window. Graphene is also interesting. Graphene and Drone are extensions. It's the only thing I'm using in Archillion. Okay, so we talk about Mockito. The other story is with the configuration. For some reason, I always ask about the configuration, and we never configure anything because there's no use case for configuring. But I just find out it's easier to show you how to configure Java 6 applications than argue with that. Message. So there is one small hack. With Java 6, I can create a class, configurator, and this class can produce the configuration, and produce means produces, return enterprise configuration. Do it first, and then delete it. So, what it means, I created a string and string configurator. It produces the string. Why? What's the problem? Ah, perfect. Great. Create beans XML. So usually I always forget it in my projects, but never on stage. And this had, if there is no beans XML, dependency injection won't work. So bits.xml is the only XML file you really need, and you can just create it in that way. I will keep it, but if someone asks questions, more complex question, I get a code completion with, if I have internet, with the location here. So that's the only reason I keep eigentlich das German, the schema definition. So inject. By the way, this can be private, doesn't or not. To mock out string is not that common. And with a little bit luck, I have to also to use it somehow. EJBs are worthless if they are not used. Generator, and I would say this is the perfect. I think this is a nice contrast to the nice JavaFX session. Everything is here black and white. What was the name of the guy? It's a generator. Generator slides. So this came from the enterprise configuration, do it first. And of course, it's not usable in the real world. You probably already recognize that because I can only configure one string at a time. So, which is not sufficient, even not for a very simple Java 6 project. So injection point, I can just ask here about the, this is about the member. Declaring class, I think. Get declaring class, yes. So I get the class back. So what it actually is, it is the target where it gets injected. And the declaring class, get name, of course. So I get the class name, and then I can do something like class name. And you see where I'm going. What I would like to have is the unique identifier of the injection point. If I have that, I can really easily to configure the whole application, even on the fly, which is somehow crazy, but very possible. So you see here, I get this is the fully qualified name of the site generator, and the message is the attribute name, and this is unique worldwide. So what you can do, you can cache the configuration here. I could easily, the next question I always get is, how about parameter injection? I could inject here the stage, for instance, and make stage-dependent configuration. So the question is not whether it is possible. The question is, do you really need it? So if you need it, you can easily configure everything on the fly. You can inject strings, ints, floats, whatever you want. You can cache them, fetch them as data from the database. No issue at all. Questions about that? I think the resource adapter itself is you can use injection in the resource adapter part. Is the resource adapter a managed bean? And my answer is I don't think it is a managed bean, but I think you can inject stuff at least in the resource adapter class. What works for sure is bean validation and exposure of adapter properties to administration console. This is specified. And in JCA 1.6 adapter, I don't think it is a managed bean. It is not scope for sure. Okay, but I'm not sure. So I have to read the specification. I actually built several adapters without knowing that. This is my shame, but yeah. If you're interested in adapters, go to connectors.adam.bean. I wrote some open source adapters with BSD or Apache license. I forgot it actually. It's whatever sounds better. So I would try to answer that question somewhere, okay? Twitter or blog or whatever, but very good question. Other questions? It is not directly related to the stuff right here, right? With adapter, so okay. Other questions? You get a t-shirt, you can, I don't know where you are, but you get a t-shirt after that. Okay, other questions? So we have configuration, and now the question about architecture. So what you already saw, strange name boundary. So how to structure Java 6 applications. So what I'm seeing still is like, I know, freestyle modularization. It's like There are great tools, by the way, which are also misused by architects, sadly. It's like SonarJ, Structure One-on-One, tools like that, which allows you to measure dependencies between classes. And what I like to do, how do I like to structure my source code is to think about the business and then name the artifacts about the business requirements. So if I would like to create a slides generator, I would call that slide generator or something with slides, but not beans, manage beans, DAOs, value objects. Who cares about DAOs, value objects, or manage beans? It's all about business. So it's like the first doesn't matter. So CompDevOps, of course, does matter, but usually doesn't. This is a company name. Then comes the layer or tier business presentation. Then the component name, which is also business, always business. And in my cases, it's like the essential entity. So if you were an online store, it would be like customer, order, book, or something like this. In my case, at least slides. And now I found a very old pattern called entity control boundary. And the entity control boundary pattern is actually, I think, older than UML itself. So if we have an internet, entity control boundary. And the nice story is there are ready-to-use icons for that. Wow, exactly. Abmeldingen is this. So this is the boundary, this is control, and this is the entity. And no idea what this is. I don't need it. So, but concentrate on that, right? No alarms in Java 6. So the boundary is the entry point of a component. So it's always a boundary. This is a package boundary. Control is optional, and control is the reusable part. Why optional? If you would make controls mandatory, you will end up with empty boundaries. Because if you would like to create CRUD applications or master data management, it is just sufficient to inject the entity manager to the boundary, and you are actually done. And then I will wait until your code becomes more complex and then factor out the logic into a control. And this is the main difference between Java 6 and J2E. In J2E, we got about 15 patterns, and you had to start with the patterns. In Java 6, you concentrate on the business logic, and if you have a problem or if it's become too complex, then you apply the patterns. But by the way, most of the Java J2E patterns are dead anyway. So there is actually everything is dead except application service. So everything is actually pointless. Very fast internet, you saw, right? So we have boundary, control, and entity. So we have boundary. This would be the, and the boundary is always stateless. Why? Because it always has to start transactions. And it's also nice, if the boundary comes first, I can apply aspects or measure transactions, and these are actually business transactions. I could easily build a, I don't know, performance audit. And this could be an interceptor. And the interceptor looks like that. Measure something. Invocation context. And you can apply interceptors whenever you like. Throws exceptions. So, and now with exception, right? Okay. It probably throws more than one, but it will be too fluent. So now we can measure performance easily here, right? So I would just, too lazy to measure, but oh, this looks nice. Get method. So, and almost done, just around invoke. And now the interesting part is I can annotate all boundaries, and I would do it by hand. You can, of course, create a portable extension for that, but I think for documentation purposes, it's not that bad having this in the bytecode. There's also a point of arguing with architects. Now your interceptors and boundary are coupled, and my question is, what can happen in worst case? No answer so far. In worst case, you will have to remove that. And in worst case, I would try to find someone with, Perl expertise and write a one-liner to remove all interceptors from my source code. So this would be the worst case. So, but instead of that, I saw already stereotypes with binding on whatever. The problem is, you have to, Java 6 projects are usually not that, rocket science. So there is not like HTML5 startups or all startups are using Java 6. It's more like there are some companies, I would call them 9-to-5 companies, and you have to think about these developers as well. And they're absolutely not interested in playing with 5 stereotypes until they get to the source code, So from this perspective, I mean, it's perfect because if you just click on that, you see what happens behind the scenes. And by the way, if you save that, it also should work. No. There is another annotation called interceptor, and then you have to do that. So you can usually, working with stereotypes then. What are stereotypes? It's like a macros. Stereotype, you can just think about an annotation and just apply some other annotations, meta annotations, and one of them is interceptor. And then you have to activate the interceptor in Beans XML. There are use cases for that, but just, for monitoring, business monitoring, I will keep it in code. For debugging, or I will factor it out somewhere. And by the way, with portable extensions, you can register interceptors even on the fly. And if you're curious, I've wrote an article for Java Magazine with the E from Oracle, and I just did it. So I just on the fly registered interceptors without any annotation. So it also works. So very good. Other questions? Yeah. No, there is no implementation package. This is a good point. You don't get the point of this packaging. What usually happens, I have 2 other packages. There is a boundary, control, and entity. But there is no impl or something, if you ask about that. So I don't try to encapsulate something. I just prepare that. And the point of that is I can measure dependencies, very pragmatic way, whether there is a coupling between entity control and boundary. So this direction is okay, but the other way is not okay. And this is really easy to measure. And this is the entry point of component. This is my API. And this is also nice too, because if you would like to understand a component, you just go to boundary, open that, and see what the component does. This is actually the only thing. And there is very easy to document then, because I say boundary consists of just EJB 3.1. That is. Why? Because of transactions and so forth. Control are managed beans or EJBs. When they are EJBs, if you need schedules or asynchronous processing and stuff like that. And entities are just domain objects. Okay? And usually, I don't care about encapsulation of boundaries because all of my Java 6 application, actually, if they need remoting, I use RESTful web services. And regardless what happens in boundary and entity, it gets serialized over JSON or XML anyway. So we could introduce 5 interfaces and feed 5 DTOs and some interactions, but at the end of the day, you will expose XML with JSON, so you get the ultimate decoupling between your client and the service. Okay? Are you happy with the answer? Then you get T-shirt. Okay. So control could be any class you like. So it would be buzzwords, and I mean it's almost that, but why not? Next. What it means, I don't know, but I see it's from time to time. Attempts to introduce that, right? So I can just use it my and this is how Java 6 code actually is supposed to look like. It is the boundary, and controls get injected if I need some. If I would just like to access the database, I would use the entity manager. And this is the next point is like, and what's about data access object? Why not encapsulate the entity manager with the data access object? So okay, then do it, encapsulate that. But I don't like, empty delegates. If someone encapsulates the entity manager and the method save invokes merge, it is not really encapsulated. This is like empty delegate, which just increases the complexity without any added value. And by the way, talking about DAOs, this is also a very interesting point. there is a domain store J2E pattern. Very interesting. I'll show it from time to time to architects who have the old book on the table. And so look at this. It is 2003. It was developed before JPA. The name of this is Persistence Manager with method persist, persist all, delete, delete all, create query. So persist all, just rename it to Entity Manager. Then Persistence Manager Factory, rename it to Entity Manager Factory. Query is the query. Transaction is entity transaction. State Manager is unit of work, in, for instance, Eclipse Link internally. What it is, it's actually Entity Manager is the implementation of domain store pattern. If you read that, it is actually exactly, and the domain store is the further implementation of data access object pattern. So, and the data access object pattern, if you look at the data access object pattern, so it's the only reference I know is from Sun and now from Oracle. First, so what's about patterns? So my information is patterns like you have a problem and you look up for a solution. And this is declared actually this is the solution, and this is forces. So there are the conditions when to use the pattern. If you look at the solution, this is know how the most DAOs look like. They don't use data sources and result sets. And if you read that, you want to provide a uniform data access API for persistent mechanism like relational databases, LDAP, object-oriented databases, XML repositories, and flat files. It's just crazy. So I never had such requirement to do something like this. So it means either we rename the DAO or redefine this, but this DAO is that. And if you think about this, actually the entity manager is way better than the DAO was before, because the most recent entity managers are not able to deal, not only able to deal with Eclipse Link, Hibernate, OpenJPA, Data Nucleus, and so forth. Usually they can also encapsulate NoSQL data stores as well. For instance, the OGM from Hibernate or Eclipse Link are able to access MongoDB or Cassandra. And even Cassandra comes with own entity manager, which encapsulates the Cassandra data store, right? So we are building DAOs in my projects only when we have to access something which is not convenient. In my current projects, for instance, LDAP is not really fun to use. So we created a DAO, which actually even matches here with the origin explanation of LDAP, and this is actually perfect. For all other cases, we use Entity Manager directly, because I think in Java 7 there will be no major change, and in Java 8, okay, then we have to wait 5 to 10 years. And the question is whether in 5 to 10 years our application will still alive, right? Questions? DAO is also a never-ending story, meeting story. So if you would like to argue with DAOs, what I usually do, really, no kidding as well, I try in the first meeting to create a easy architecture. If it's not possible, I create DAO up front. I build one here. I can show you how it works. The DAO pattern, you can create one. So it looks like that. So I can create, find, delete, update. And then everyone is happy. It's like, oh, okay, now we have everything encapsulated. And then I wait 1 to 2 iterations and then delete it, and everything is fine. So no questions about DAOs anymore. It's like at the beginning, there's an agenda, talk about configuration, modularization, DAOs, and if this is solved, our project can go live. This is not true anymore. I would start in Java 6 in day 1 with use cases. So give my use case, and we create the first iteration. And talking about technology is a wrong place in Java 6. Everything is extremely simple. You can build full-stack applications in minutes with really least amounts of code. So, pumping patterns to the application, it doesn't improve anything. So, other questions? And then, probably one new stuff. Why the servlet? This was hopefully something new. So, where's my slide generator? What's not obvious with servlets in Java 6? They can be asynchronous. And this is the first interesting thing. This works already fine with Java 6. And what we can do here is start async. So, and now you will see something interesting. The async blocks. Doesn't, then I have to redeploy that. Oh, saving is always good. Now it blocks. And, okay, what's the feature, right, if it blocks? We have no time, but what is actually, what we could do, we can just send, we have so much time. Just ask the questions. Because my screen is already red, it means DevOps is over. Events, fire. So what I did, I fired the async context somewhere, and just imagine what I could do. I could create an observer in the business layer, and in the business layer could receive the async context, which is hopefully wrapped in something which is servlets independent, and then I can push events to the browser. This is actually very easy to implement. And why async supported true? What it means is, it only means it doesn't use threads for blocking. So the connection is decoupled from the thread. So I can handle several thousand connections from one servlet. And this is actually called Comet style communication. And we use it in many projects as for interactive progress bars or for pushing data to the backend, or in my open source project, Lightfish, it's just a monitoring tool for Glassfish. It just pushes the monitoring data to a JavaFX application in real time. So it's actually a fancy hack. And we use it more and more because it turns out in many projects there is lots of, for instance, JMS is misused for that often. You can just use it a lot easier with servlets and async supported. Yeah. Not yet. So I think this will be done in Java 7. But this is just what happens. It blocks the browser waits for response, right? And blocks. And what you usually do, you would create a schedule, an EJB schedule, and will send every 2 seconds either the message or just like nothing. With nothing would be some plus or minus a sign which is well known to the client, because if you wait too long. Usually firewalls will just drop the connection. So so you have to to have small chunks of time. So server send events is total different API in Java 7. But this is already usable right now. And I wanted to share with you because in recent project we use it really for useful stuff. Also for monitoring is interesting. You can register in real-time monitoring tools and see what the applications have actually does. Okay? Thank you. Okay, security in Java 6 is somehow, okay, security, 2 minutes. Security. So first of all, imagine that. A package, slides has to be secure. So security boundary. So, and a class, security provider. This is actually an interesting hack, because the security comes over and over again, and actually this is a very good question. So you get 2 t-shirts. So principal at inject. So what happens, I get hopefully the principal, right? In the case of Glassfish, anonymous right now because I'm not logged in. But what you can easily do, you create your own user. In entity, it would be an entity. And what you can do, it has, for instance, name and permissions. It would be array of permissions. I just don't write arrays, right? Because permissions. So, and what you could do right now is the following. Just imagine you are exposing the DevOps hacker. And could use from principal the name, which is unique. And here, fetch the roles or whatever from a database. So here I could inject an entity manager, whatever, and with that hack, you can enhance the security model with whatever you want. And you can inject your own security role to interceptors or whatever, and fetch the flexible roles from LDAP or whatever. That's actually what I'm doing. And we kill, with this hack, many security extensions. It was extremely simple. And only in few cases, we had to create our own annotations and build an interceptor which checked the annotations and compared the annotations with the role. And this is actually very, and JAS is not that important in Java 6, I would say. The standard security comes from WebXML, from servlets, and is role-based security. And what the application server usually does, it gives you realms. And the realms are files, JDBC, LDAP. This is what every application server or even Tomcat have. And the application server creates a principal which represents the user. But what you can easily do with CDI, for instance, you can enrich the principal and expose that, producers. This is actually the producers. And now the principal, this will come from database, right? So, and this is actually a common, what we actually do in many applications, particular if we have, when the authentication is separated from the authorization. You know, there are bigger companies where username and password is stored in one database and the permissions should be more flexible. You can actually, with this trick, you can achieve a lot. And by the way, in the next Java magazine, I wrote a whole article about security because it's one of the most asked questions, actually. So this is free, this Java magazine, so I can. So, one T-shirt because of the other questions. So sorry, don't have to ask next. Okay.
Yes, I don't know if it's this theme, but about Selenium and testing.
Selenium testing, yeah.
You mentioned that you are using plugin for Selenium.
Yeah.
What are you doing to test application tests, not integration, but browser tests on Unix, for example? Or, for example, if we are developing on one and another, do you fire up Firefox or something like that?
What I'm doing in Selenium. So actually, this is what I did before. I just had to use, I like IntelliJ, but I had to use IntelliJ because of strange Eclipse formatting rules, and Eclipse IntelliJ has a plugin to import all the. So I'm contributing to Archelion, one of my projects, and this is tested with Graphene and Selenium. This is actually open source, you can check it out if you. And this fires up the Firefox and tests everything from outside. Why I did this with Graphene and not with standard Archelion? Because I need to know the session. I create our own scope. We create our own scope, and the problem is you can only test a scope if it's stored associated with a session. So you need to know HTTP servlet. Yeah, exactly. Because of this Eclipse code format, I used IntelliJ. So, and this is not able to start because I'm running other Glassfish right now. So this is the problem. But it would fire the Firefox and will go through all the use cases. So this is one case where you are relying on HTTP sessions and would like to test that. And the other cases is just imagine you have a wizard, right, which comprises multiple views. In this wizard, I don't like to click 5 times in order to test the last page. So I'll try to automate as much as possible. So this are the test cases for Selenium, but it does not replace the actual user tests.
But what do you do with Maven? Do you test it also somehow from Maven?
This is Maven. This is complete. This is Maven. IT. This is Maven.
But can you put it on Jenkins?
I could put it in Jenkins, then Firefox will open. No problem. So you can do it. You have to be cautious. I think there are headless Selenium tests, but I have no experience with that. So I always test it with Firefox or real browser. But very good question. Thank you. Other questions? And you can check it out. It doesn't work because it also needs an 8080 port, and my Glassfish is running, and this is Tommy actually. So on the same port. So other questions? No questions. So happy deleting, and see you next year. I will try to prepare my slides a little bit more, and my abstract as well. And yeah, it seems like a great conference, so thank you for the invitation, and see you probably next year. Thank you very much.